Yeah.
They're recording.
All right, welcome everybody.
Good.
This is the conversation with the Richard Starkings panel. Just real quick, my name is Matt Selby. I'm a comic book reader, lover, collector of several decades. I like to talk about them, make videos. You know, I do a few a week. We are here with comics industry legend Richard Starkings. Chances are that if you own comics from the last 30, 40 years, then you probably have some with his name in them. Writer, artist, letterer, designer, what else?
Bon vivant.
That too. Just comics great, Richard Starkings. You've worked on everything under the sun pretty much.
I have worked on everything that collectors like yourself are interested in.
Yes.
Put it that way.
I have a lot of books with your name in them.
I have a lot of Marvel, DC, Dark Horse.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of times I used to see Richard Starkings and Comic Craft, and as a kid I was like, what's a Comic Craft? You know, but that's a company that you started.
That's my studio.
Yeah.
Where's Tyler? There's Tyler. Tyler's Comic Craft. I'm Comic Craft. Jimmy's Comic Craft. We had a studio in Santa Monica for about 7 years, and you know, the reason I started Comic Craft was because deadlines. As a letterer, you were always last in the production line. So yeah, but you're not going to.
That's okay. It's fine.
That's okay. Leave it be. Get closer. When I was in England, I was also an editorial, so I had some control over the deadline I could give myself to do the lettering, and we were mailing pages to lettering artists in England. And when I moved to America, editors at Marvel US wanted stuff lettered overnight, and I don't work overnight. I like to sleep. So it was very clear to me very early on that to meet the deadlines, I had to have an assistant, and you couldn't have an assistant because that's working with another pen letterer.
Yeah.
Why would they want to do that if then you were getting a different style? But it's funny because somebody brought me a set of Venom yesterday, and I didn't letter, this was when I was pen lettering, and issue 6 was by Rick Parker. Rick Parker lived in New York, was in the offices every day, and if there was a deadline crunch where they couldn't afford the time to ship it to me in California and need to ship it back, somebody else would letter it. So that happened to me on an issue of the X-Men, I think 186 or 187 of X-Men, was it 286 or 287, and I was like, finally I'm lettering the X-Men, because Tom Wojtkowski had gone to work at Image Comics because they were paying more, and the door was open, and my brother came to visit me in California, so I took the day off, and my punishment was somebody in New York like a lot of
Oh, man.
So that was when I thought, well, how do I stop that from happening? And a former assistant editor from Marvel called Mark Siri had moved out to California too, and he said, you should just make fun of your lettering style. And I was like, how do I do that? And a guy who was working for the RAND Corporation in California, which is a top secret development company. They work on weapons and stealth aircraft, all kinds of things. He was super genius, and I traded. I can't remember what I traded for. Photographer, who's the original program I used, and Tom Luth was a colorist. Oh, he wanted Photoshop. I think I traded in Photoshop for photographer or Illustrator. I can't remember which, but I started working with this guy Neil Softy, and we created the first font based on my lettering, and started convincing Marvel editors to allow me to use a computer font, we call it in those days.
Yeah. I want to talk about the beginning of your career, but I want to skip ahead though, because we were talking last week and you said something I thought was interesting. You were talking about when Image was first created, how the set of Image founders brought a lot
Image, okay?
It was they brought a lot of the letters with them. which
Well,
left a hole in Marvel, and that's where you came in,
So
right?
what you've got to remember about the late 80s and the launch of, I can't remember which came first, I think it was Spider-Man #1, the Todd McFarlane
It
book.
was 1990.
Then
yeah.
X-Men, or was it then X-Force?
I think it was Spider-Man first, and then X-Men, Jim Lee's X-Men, and then X-Force after.
So in the 80s, Jim Shooter introduced greater royalties to Marvel Comics. And that was something that Neil Adams had fought for in the 70s. Jim Shooter got hired. He said it's ridiculous that movies don't get royalties. So Marvel became the first company that really introduced not just royalties on collections. But remember, there weren't any collections of comics until the explosion in the 90s. Creator royalties were if you create a character like Deadpool and you had a contract saying if you create this character, you'll get something like 2-3% of money's made off that character. So everybody wanted to get the royalties on the #1, right? So Todd had made a big name for himself on Amazing Spider-Man and lobbied to write and draw. Therefore, he gets the writer royalties, the pencil royalties, and I think he inked it as well. And I think he also gave Rick Parker a royalty because the sales of Spider-Man were like 8 million.
Yeah.
That's why you can get so many copies of them. And so what happened was each of those books made millionaires of Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Jim Valentino, Will Smaby. They all became millionaires overnight. And because they knew it was only like a 3% royalty, they were like, imagine what it would be like if we got all the royalties.
Yeah.
So I think it was Todd was the sort of ringleader. They met with the president of Marvel at the time and said, this is what we're doing, you don't pay us enough, we're leaving. And they thought that was a bargaining ploy, and it wasn't. So they basically walked away, started Image Comics, had a deal with Malibu, and Malibu got a percentage of the sales of those books.
Yeah, they did the distribution, I think, bringing that concept the first year.
But it made multi-millionaires of all of them. They then started hiring other graders, and there was that whole explosion, which was fueled by the collapse of the baseball card market. The collapse of the baseball card market meant that a lot of those baseball card shops turned to comics, and that's when you got all the gimmick covers, all the image launches, and everybody thought, if you buy this, it's going to be worth, thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's really fueled, for instance, Venom #1 is the fact that it's a movie.
Yeah.
But how much do you have to pay for a store #1? Like
Yeah, that's not much.
Or Spider-Man #1, which may be a little bit more expensive now, but there was a period in the late 90s when you could buy all those books. If there's 8 million of them printed, they're not worth much.
Right.
It's books that had a lower print. Basically, the Marvel books financed the Image books, but the success of the speculation of the Image books helped the Image be successful.
Yeah, and then that's right around the time you started working for Marvel, is that right? Around the time.
So I was really lucky.
92?
I moved to America in '89, and that was sort of the tail end of all those Marvel books, but the beginning of Image was like in 1991.
Yeah, 92 I think was the first one came out.
Yeah, you're right. So I was working on things like Sleepwalker or Dark Hope or Night Thrasher, all these books that nobody.
All the stuff that I loved as a kid, Sleepwalker, Dark Hawk, like you said, Night Thrasher. There's a couple others I think, but
I worked on Shield. I worked on RoboCop. Yeah, and Marvel was sort of flailing around a little bit because, the image creators had moved on, and some people were sort of stepping into that role. But popular because Eric Larson was just finishing his run on Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah.
When he went and launched Dragon. So what happened in 91, 92 was because they were multimillionaires, they were like, we'll double your page rate. So Tom Wazikowski was getting very well to do Spawn and nothing, he didn't do anything else. So I'm still on the low Marvel page rate, and I was picking up work. I had just one monthly book, and then suddenly I had 2, 3, 4, 5.
Because there was a need there, right?
Yeah,
There was a need for somebody.
and Chris Eliopoulos at that time was doing Dragon and other books. So, and then as they expanded, those lecturers, Mike Heiser went to work at Milestone, he moved to La Jolla in San Diego, and because I've worked in editorial at Marvel UK, I had good relationships with Bob Harris, Rob Macchio, Mark Grunwald, and Greg Wright, who when I moved to New York, I slept on Greg's sofa for 2 months before I found my own place. And I was working for Bob Chase, who was editing She-Hulk and Hulk at the time. And because Greg and I were close friends, I could go to the Marvel offices every day. And I lived there for 7 months, and I literally would go in and knock on everybody's door. And literally, pre-social media, you had to knock on editor's door.
Yeah.
And you knew if they closed the door, they'd see you coming. But that's how I picked up work in New York. And I moved out to California and work was shipped to me. And because they knew, they got to know that I could do stuff overnight. When you're in New York, you can do 7 pages. You go in at 5 o'clock, pick up 7 pages, letter them that night, go in at 9 o'clock. And that's what I did.
Overnight?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. When did you sleep?
During the day.
Yeah, okay.
And it was a hot summer in New York that year. That was the year Batman came out.
Yeah.
Batman, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Karate Kid 3. I remember because Greg insisted that we go and see 3 movies every Friday night in a row. Because movies would...
Like an hour and a half.
There was a 1 o'clock showing
Yeah.
in New York. I saw Batman on the 1 o'clock showing the day after release because I was in line for the 10 o'clock. It filled up.
Yeah.
But it was a 1 o'clock right after. So,
Yeah, I miss those days. So what about so going back even further? Like you started in the UK. Did you start with Marvel UK, or what was your first thing?
I worked. I sent all my work to all the publishers I knew. One was Fleetwood Magazines, who were the publishers of 2000 AD, which was my goal. But I worked on a thing called Wisdom Chips Holiday Special, with a 4-page strip, which was my first professional work. And it was Captain Kidd, and I know that I must mess it up because they didn't call me again. I did a job for Looking, but they didn't even print because it was too big, and I turned up to pick up the job and they said, "Oh, sit down." What? I have to do that while you're watching?
You wanted to test you?
It was a horrible experience. But finally I got to meet editors at Marvel because there was an ad in the Guardian for an art assistant, and I was like, I don't know what that is, but why? And I got work doing Transformers, what else? But little jobs here and there. And I was living in London, so I was able to do the same thing that I did in New York, which is going to work, stick your head in the offices, and in those days they were so glad that there was somebody who would say, "I'll take this home and do that." So I worked on Transformers and what they call Future Shocks, which is 2000 reviews, other breaking channel.
Okay. Like a showcase kind of thing?
Yeah, they're like Twilight Zone stories. So there were 2 or 3 page stories that, again, 2000 AD gave you a lot of time. It would give you a week to do 3 pages. So I'd pick it up and we'd take it back Friday.
Yeah, and I think about, because I listen to podcasts about comics back in the day, how it was like you said before, FedExing. You had to FedEx everything. There was not emailing, and even before faxing and stuff. So probably had to get good with the schedules and all that
DC
too.
used to spend so much money on FedEx. I think it was telling you the story that Dave Gibbons was working on Green Lantern.
Oh yeah, you got 1 page at a time.
And so they would FedEx one page of script to Heathrow Airport, then it would be put on in a taxi.
Right.
And the taxi would be driven to St Albans, which is a good 40 minutes outside London, and they would get this paper script and draw it that day.
Yeah.
That's an extreme situation, and I think only an editor and also writing will be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's funny, we talked about that in our earlier panel about how that's not great. Like it's better to have the full script, or read the full script before you start pencil, before you start any of the other work. Like it's better to know as much about the full overall story as possible.
That's funny because as a writer, I want to see the page that I've just written drawn before I write another one.
Okay.
So I write in a very, I want to say collaborative, but probably the artists don't think it's as collaborative. I work very differently with Axel on Elephant Men and Abigail on Mercy, because Abigail is just ideas just keep coming out of her, and just trying to keep up with her ideas and make sense of them.
Yeah.
Is part of the challenge, but it's also the joy of working with Abigail, because I'm not going to become a coordinator.
Right.
And you know, on Ask for Mercy, I created like 2 of the characters, she created 2 of the characters, and what's fun is having ideas for each other's characters.
Yeah.
But on Elephant Men, it's so personal to me in a way. I do little thumbnails for Axel, because he's more visual, but I do more of a full script for Abigail, because he needs to see it, I think, visually, whereas Abigail, you know, I'm trying to see what she's seeing.
Right.
Because I don't know if you've ever seen her draw a commission, but what she draws at the table at San Diego, which is one of the most chaotic environments I know of, is like finished artwork for anybody else.
You're talking about how she can draw things from memory, like a jet, from memory, not having to reference anything, which is pretty fascinating. Do you find it difficult to have different writing styles for different artists?
No, because that's sort of, you just adapt to sort of survival.
Yeah.
You know, I do think that, because I do thumbnails because I need to see it before I write it. So when I'm doing thumbnails, that's different. But when you're working with an artist with Abigail's capabilities, you just need the story, and she will come up with incredible visuals. With Abigail, because I'm the first scriptwriter she's worked with, I had to teach storytelling. I say, this needs to be full figures, this needs to be an establishing shot. There's a lot of essentials that she needed to learn. Because a lot of artists want to draw the most interesting shot, not the storytelling shot. I think that's what separates the great artists. They can do establishing shots, also great visual.
Yeah, there's got to be some visuals, not just like figures, but there's got to be visual storytelling. And I like to watch things talking about the images need to draw your eye to the correct spot and to guide your eye around the page from this panel, then down here. Do you have to, how much of that do you put in your scripts versus just letting the artist, like trusting the artist that they'll tell the story visually?
I think these days I work exclusively with people I can talk to.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, Marvel and DC like to separate the writer and the artist, so you give us the script, we'll take it away, and we'll give it to an artist, and we'll figure out the relationship with the artist. Whereas Image and Creator and Comics have sort of encouraged collaborations where there's conversations all the time.
And you like that better, right? The collaborative process.
I also work with artists I work exclusively with artists who pencil, ink, and coloring work, or some combination thereof, because you don't then have to explain to someone who's a colorist what's going on in the scene, that the artist already has all that information. But put as much as you can in the script. Again, the way Marvel works is they want everything from the writer to pass on to the artist, so that they don't have to necessarily have the creative team talk to each other. I think
that seems a little backwards. Like you want them to be back and forth,
but
constantly talking.
these days, Marvel and DC are having a lot of artists who don't speak English.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, and I know of at least one situation where the artists have to be translated before the last.
Oh, right.
So there's a lot of odds in that machine.
Yeah. So sort of switching gears, like, do you have, so you worked on like a lot of the biggest stories out there. Do you have a favorite one or one that you have a fond memory of or that means a lot to you? Like, what is something?
Well, that's going to be a killing joke because,
Yeah.
you know, somebody, I was working with an UK, so what's your dream assignment? I was like, script Alan Moore, art Brian Bolland, it'll never happen. And then it was announced.
No, I'll show you. And
Yeah,
then they went
no,
in.
it was announced, and I was so fortunate because I was at a FarleyCon in Birmingham, England, and I was sitting next to Brian Bolland, and he had pages, the first 9 pages of Killing Joke there, and I just sort of leaned across and said, "You know, who's lecturing it?" And he said, "Oh no, I don't know anybody." And
I know how to do that stuff.
I was lucky because I was working on Halo Jones, which is which is an Alan Moore story. So I was already working with Alan Moore, and Brian put my name forward. I wrote some of the editor. Actually, I wrote the Danny O'Neill lecture at that time. Killing Joke was like 4 editors on it. It took 3 years. And I worked in London, and I used to go over to Brian's flat in Covent Garden, pick up pages, 1 or 2 at a time, because he's not fast. And I, you know, just a joy. It was Batman, Brian Bolland, with Alan Moore.
Yeah.
And no question that opened doors for me when I moved to New York.
Okay.
Oh, you left the Killing Joke? Here are 10 pages, bring them back tomorrow.
Okay. So not only was it your almost dream creative team,
Yeah.
And it was a book you enjoyed, but also it also opened doors. So like it was
Yeah.
just like a total package of
Yeah.
something that you were.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember Bobby Chase was going to be missing work, but she went over to Greg Wright's office and said, "Richard, any good?" And Greg said, "Are you kidding me? It's a Killing Joke." You know, so it was a way to convince other editors that I had credentials.
Yeah. Can you, this doesn't involve you as much, but I just thought it was interesting. The story you told me the other day about the recoloring of it, can you tell that story real quick?
Oh yeah, when I was working on A Killing Joke, because I was the only interaction Brian was having, because he wasn't talking to Alan, he wasn't sending pages, there wasn't email at the time. You know, we were basically, he would draw the page, I would go and pick it up with his pencil so that I could letter on the artwork before he inked it. And he would tell me what was going on the page. And it's got all these sequences of flashback to the Joker's origin.
Right.
And Brian said, "Blue and white, you know,
That's right.
the shrimps are going to be pink, the bone the dog is chewing on is going to be red." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds really great." And I was seeing them in black and white only. And even though I was friends with John Higgins, who colored the first edition, I did not see the book until it came out. And I remember looking through it and thinking, this isn't what Brian.
Yeah, that's not what you described.
Yeah. And I'd met John in the pub and he had copies of the Killing Joke. So when I saw it, and I was looking through it, I was like, "Yeah, this is great, John." And then I went to see Brian that weekend, and Brian was devastated. You know, he's on record not giving anything away.
Right.
Didn't like it. Thought, you know, I spent 3 years of my life on this, and it's been going. So when they allowed Brian to recolor it, and it came out with Brian's coloring, that to me was like, well, that's the book that I
The
expected.
recoloring is more accurate.
And I think, you know, because everybody got used to John Higgins' colors, it's amazing how people there's so much conflict over which is the better version. I would say the artist vision, the artist who drew the story has the right to his vision, but there's 2 versions, so we all.
Well, that's why I found that story so fascinating, because I know the debate between the original, the original is always going to be better, the recolor isn't as good, versus some people like the recolor. So that's why I find that interesting, because I think I would lean more towards the artist's interpretation, what they saw in their head as how they thought it was going to be colored.
Well, can you imagine if Brian's at a show and somebody says, "I hate the recoloring"?
Yeah.
You know, and fans do that. They go up and they say, oh, I much prefer the original to the guy that recolored it. So,
yeah, I can't. I just thought when you told me that, I was like, oh, because I've never really. I've always seen the goods and bads of both of them, but when you told me, oh, actually the newer one is actually more correct, because usually it's the opposite.
It's true to Brian's vision, you know, but people get emotionally attached to when they first read that book.
Yeah.
You know, and Alan was all about watching at that time, and he also said that he regarded Killing Joke as just like a Batman angle, like a throwaway. And again, you know, Brian spent 3 years of his life doing it, so it was very dismissive. And it's only in latter years that I think Brian really appreciated this. That book never stopped selling.
Yeah.
You know, not that Watchmen stopped selling, it still sells. But Watchmen sold more copies in 3 months leading up to the release of reading it than it had in the previous 10 years.
Yeah.
Whereas The Killing Joke was never adapted into a live action movie and constantly gained in reputation and esteem.
Yeah.
And in fact, they ran that in the back of something like British Joke Store, so some DC collection, and they let Killing Joke go out of print, and retailers were furious. They're like, we want that continuously in print, because now it's like 5 different editions.
Yes.
Since I moved to Chattanooga 6 years ago, they've shipped me 3 different reshapes of the Killing Joke.
I think I've got
If
2
not
of
4.
them.
If not 4.
Do you know for sure that he killed the Joker again? Because it's left open to interpretation.
No, Grant Morrison, who likes to mess with Alan Moore fans, said, oh, he killed the Joker again. But no, of course he doesn't. It's not in the script.
Right. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Like, is there? I didn't know if it was like
No.
there's something somewhere that's definitive.
And if anything,
but
the way I lettered the E is perhaps can make me think that that's the Joker screaming, but it's not the Joker screaming. It's not in the script.
it is a laughter. He's laughing.
It's the mixture of the laughter and the police siren
Oh, okay. Yeah.
coming to the rescue.
Did you, at the time, was there when you were doing those final couple of panels, was there any thought that people are going to think of this one way or the other, or was it just like that wasn't really a thought? Like you're just like trying to finish it out, or was there an intention
And
there?
the earth isn't flat.
It isn't flat. That's right.
Batman did not kill the Joker.
Okay. That's good. I mean, I always.
The moon landings weren't fake. Batman did not kill the Joker.
Well, and it's interesting because, like part of that, there's also the argument about is it canon or not, and some of it, at least like Martin Gordon getting shot, obviously they carried that forward for several years. So there's the great debate of is the whole thing canon, is it just they just borrow elements and put it in the canon books, but Killing Joke is not canon, but there's just a lot of debate about how people interpret that book.
Fans debate comics? Really?
It's happened before.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, I know. Everybody has their own opinion. You have worked a lot with, some of my favorite stuff is all the Jeff Willis stuff, the Long Halloween.
I would say that, my working with Tim is probably, as a lettering artist, working with anybody, working with Tim is probably the most harmonious working relationship with an artist I've had in my life. It was never about the work, it was fun, and he had very specific ideas about lettering. He loves Sam Rosen, he should love Artisan, but I'll give him that. He wanted a very clean and simple style. He wanted exclamation marks on the sound effects, which I don't agree with. It's not exclamation for sound.
Okay.
And we'd have those conversations.
Yeah.
But actually now, sometimes I'll put an exclamation mark on a sound effect just as a
pay homage
to Tim. But I like that he had very specific and some would say narrow ideas. But that's his artwork. He knows what he wants. He knows that he wants heavy blacks. He knows that he wants wash or working with someone like Tim where it's not work, it's a joy. Tim, I don't think Tim worried about money so much as enjoying his work.
Yeah.
And that's not to say it didn't happen. All his books are still in print.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, and there's not a lot of artists who can say that. You know, Billy 99 is still back in print. You know, Scratching the work of Strangle, that's still in print. So, you know, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of, he's not a Frank Miller, but I don't think he wanted to be a Frank Miller, you know, because Frank is sort of, there's a sort of madness about Frank, and there's a sort of quiet sanity about Tim.
Yeah.
That, you know, it's a friend, it's friendly album, even though he was very influenced and loved the characters.
Did you have was it this similar experience doing the Marvel stuff, the Spider-Man Yellow, the
Yeah.
Miracle, like all that stuff, like
Yeah.
they were all like,
And plus, Tim was much more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan.
okay.
So he was more intimidated by Marvel characters. And I think that's why he actually did want to be the regular artist on Amazing Spider-Man. So when they first pitched Spider-Man Blue, Tim said, I want it to be
Blue Hunter. I keep calling it yellow because
Daredevil yellow.
right,
cover's yellow.
they just released the gallery hardcover edition is it's mostly yellow, so I keep calling it
Yeah,
Spider-Man
the
Yellow.
direct market edition, which is the one you should have bought, is supposed to be blue.
I didn't know there was two different.
Yeah.
You did sign my original, which was blue. I don't know, I got yellow on the thing, I think.
And Tim hated the title Daredevil Yellow, which was the first one, and he used to call it Daredevil Ruin. There's a way of his, he did not like the idea, but Jeff is very good at marketing.
Yeah.
So yellow, blue, grey, white. And I think when they did Spider-Man Blue, Tim was like, yes, it's a good idea.
What was it about the yellow you didn't like?
He thought it sounded, you know, sort of diminutive.
Yeah.
You know, Daredevil's yellow. Firstly, cowardly, but
Oh,
also,
right.
you know, here's yellow. Don't
He
eat,
did that.
don't eat yellow snow. There was a lot of sort of, he was not happy with it. I remember that distinctly. But, you know, that's the irony of the relationship between Jeff and Tim. Couldn't be more different people. They're very sort of Lennon and McCartney.
Yeah.
But together, they were better than separate.
Sure.
Because Jeff has done a lot of other work, but everybody wants him to sign, you know, himself.
Right.
He did a lot of X-Men books, he did a Superman run, but everybody they don't remember Superman run, they remember Superman books.
Right. Is that what you sign most of at conventions like this? Is the Long Halloweens and all the Jeff Loeb, Tim
Killing
Sale?
Joke is always, I've signed more copies of
Okay.
Killing Joke than anything else, but it has been out over 30 years.
Sure.
Then probably back in the Long Halloween.
Yeah.
And then it depends, you know, I'm waiting for the next generation of the people who grew up in the 90s. They'll be bringing me all the X-Men books that I read from the 90s. It goes in like 10-year periods. You can tell what people grew up on.
Yeah.
I think with Batman books though, they're very well known for being books.
Right.
But, you know,
Oh, sure.
it's not
Complete
like
stories.
yeah. Whereas things like the X-Men, people bring you the single issues, Venom and one, you know, X-Men issues.
Well, I was excited to find out just the other night. I didn't know this, but you wrote Sensational Shield number 9.
I did.
Because I have the John Byrne omnibus that goes 1 to 8, and then there's a big gap, and then it's like 30 something to whatever. And you said that you wrote the issue.
I got a
after.
royalty check last year for $5.
Really?
Thank you very much. You helped the TV show.
Oh, that's right.
Because it's in one of those epic collections. So, and I co-wrote it
Okay.
with Greg Wright, who was my roommate at the time, and the reason I got to write it was because John Byrne quit, and I happened to be in Bobby Chase's office, and she wanted an artist that was working on JoJo called Jerry Paris. And Jerry was slow, you know, and I said, I don't think that would work out, but Brian Hitch is somebody I can work with. So Brian so I brought Brian to the table, and she needed a script like that week. So Greg and I said, we'll do it. Actually, no, I said, I'll write it. She looked worried. I said, I'll do it with Greg. So Greg was an editor, he's an editor, and had written for other editors at Marvel, which was very much what writers did at the time. A lot of editors worked for other editors. Howard Mackey was an editor, he wrote those writers for another editor. Often, if they were successful, they would just leave and
Nice. So, you said you got a royalty check. Was the TV show the cause of that? Like maybe drove people to get the Epic collections, which is what your issue was in. Yeah. Did you see the one issue? Number 9? Yeah. Okay. I want to find out.
I do not like writing. Firstly,
Okay.
I always feel like the best stories are redos of the stories that have been done before. Even The Killing Joke is sort of a pastiche of something people have done before. Daredevil Yellow is a pastiche of Grey is a pastiche. And I would much rather write stories where I don't know what's going to happen. But we had Fantastic Four in our bestseller. And so we had a story that started with the thing on the torch fighting, because that's what we knew they did.
Yeah, all the time.
So there's, I think the reason we love superheroes and the reason that those books have been running as long is because they never fail to deliver the same thing.
Right.
We're looking for the same thing.
Yeah, you don't want to stray too far off course. Yeah. Keep things status quo.
Well, if you're off course, then you might as well be reading an image book.
Oh, right.
You should be reading greater own books.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, stop reading them.
Well, no, I mean...
No, you have to stop.
No, I don't want to do that.
No.
I want to do both.
Just feeding the corporations, man.
We'll just get stuff out.
Well, but sometimes you don't like it because you don't think it's the way it should be written, right? Because as somebody that, if you've read comics a long time, you develop this feeling of ownership.
Right.
And you feel like you know better than the writers about how it should be done. You don't have that with Grey Run books because you went in there not with no expectations.
Right.
And you can't really say that Brian K. Vaughan doesn't know how to write saga, right? Because you read it because you enjoy the way he writes and the characters he creates. Whereas a new creative team on Spider-Man can get the character wrong.
That's what a lot of us think about the current Amazing Spider-Man. They're not doing this. This should be this way, and that should be that way. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, all right. What brought you to Chattanooga? I don't think I know this.
Lori, my wife, comes from Tennessee.
Okay.
And we met in Long Beach, California, and we were looking at houses in Long Beach, and 1,300 square feet would be at that time $650,000.
Out California.
Yeah, and that meant we both have to work full time in order to pay the mortgage, and we just about afford it. And we came to a wedding in Atlanta. We came to visit Lori's family in Chattanooga. I asked her dad, how much is your 4-bedroom, beautiful house in Mount Shadows? And he said $300,000. I looked at Lori and said, why aren't we moving here?
Okay.
Because it doesn't matter where I work.
Sure.
She had to quit her job at the Aquarium. But, and all my kids have grown up and moved to the East Coast.
Yeah, so you didn't have any ties really?
Yeah. Well, I do, I had friendship.
Sure. But now you have new ones, so it kind of worked out.
Yeah, but when you're a freelancer who works at home,
you
have to go out there and meet people. I met Andy at Epicos.
Yeah.
And then you guys invited us to trivia, and that's how I met you.
Yeah.
So
it's nice how it sort of daisy chains from one to another.
And Mike and Christine Mignola joined us at trivia. You went there.
I wasn't there. I wasn't part of the group.
And Tim came to B&M to do a signing.
Yeah.
Eric Powell's been out. He was going to move to Chattanooga.
Okay.
He was in Portland instead and regretted it.
Was there any, with your work, because you're in California, with your work, especially with like, was DC in California at the time? That you
No,
moved?
yes.
Okay.
They moved to California, it was at least 10 or 12 years ago.
Right, yeah, it was like the later part of this.
Which is inevitable. Just inevitable.
Yeah.
I'm
Did you,
surprised Marvel hasn't moved to
I know. I guess they're so ingrained in New York, or at least.
I think California's too expensive now.
Okay.
They're more likely to move to Atlanta.
Oh, so did you have to think at all about, well, you know, this will have, you didn't think like this might have some type of effect on my work if I'm
No, because
it's all remote, I mean.
What you have to remember is I am not dependent on Marvel
Right.
for my income.
Right.
So because we've sold fonts for years now,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
and that's a big source of income for me.
Yeah.
Tyler is more dependent on Marvel and DC
Right.
or Dark Horse
Yeah.
on his income. Sorry, Tyler. Or Image.
So, okay, well, so talking about that, so Comic Craft, how many people do you have now? You said you started it, I know Tyler is there, but how many more?
Just me, Tyler, and Jimmy. And Bobby briefly.
And there's not an office or anything, like you?
No, nobody needs an office.
Right. Oh yeah, I've been working at home for years.
Yeah. In fact, during the pandemic, Tyler used to come in a couple of days, but the pandemic put an end to that. And I think it's important when you're training someone that you have that instant feedback,
Right.
you're able to see work and comment and make corrections. And in fact, in the 90s, my guys would print out a page and I would draw on the page, give it back to them and make corrections. But these days, everything is digital. It's a very different industry. I mean, I miss the 80s and 90s because everything was physical and practical. I even miss the newsprint because I think there's something about a comic book newsprint, the crudeness, and I think now sort of quality is almost too much. I think you have to be a more accomplished artist and writer to look at comics these days. Whereas you look at 70s comics, they just throw stuff at the wall.
Oh yeah,
it's
just all over the place. Yeah.
I just saw some Omega the Unknown,
Yep.
which was Steve Gerber, who's a good writer, but it's such a weird comic. Or Destroyer Duck, or any of those things that came out in the late 70s, early 80s. There was more experimentation at Marvel and DC.
Absolutely, and that's what I love about that time is in the 70s all the way through probably the late 80s, especially Marvel and DC, they would just give a random character that nobody ever heard of a #1 issue. They would introduce them anywhere. Like I think about like Firestorm, he came out of nowhere. Like they would just like, oh, this is somebody has a new character, let's give them a new
But
series.
where else could you go? There was nowhere else in town to buy comics. So people took their ideas. So Thanos was created before Marvel. Jim Starlin created Thanos in one of his own comics. And then when he was working on Captain Marvel, or Iron Man, he put Thanos into the Marvel continuity. And it became Marvel's property.
Yeah.
Now, he would own that character.
Right.
He would have done it in his own story, maybe in Red Star or something that he created independently. And there are other places to go. So somebody like Jonathan Hickman made his name at Image and then went to Marvel. But he knows to keep his best ideas to himself.
Separate,
Because there have been conversations for 40 years now about why you should wholly own what you wholly create.
Right.
And I've been very lucky that people like John Wagner, who created Judge Dredd, Alan Graham, who went to 2018, they used to play softball. I was a captain of Marvel in the UK team, and John Wagner was the captain of 2002. And we played with Thrashers on a weekly basis because they were really stronger than us. And we would go to the pub afterwards, and John Wagner would literally say, "Don't sell your ideas to publishers, keep them." Because at that time, he Judge Dredd. He then made sure that no one else could write Judge Dredd and put the managing director feedback under pressure to give him a piece of it. It just happened before the first one.
Oh, okay.
But he was a great example of somebody extremely creative, full of ideas, creating great characters, Judge Dredd, Strongman, Rowan, they're all John Adams' creations. Dredd with Pat Mills to a certain extent. But he created 2008 and he fought to get some of his rights back and succeeded. But he also was telling younger talent to create their own characters.
Yeah.
He wrote the Garth Ennis. Garth went on to create his own characters, Greg Reacher and other characters that he's done over the years. So, you know, I'm lucky that I was just young enough to be part of a generation that could say, well, you know, I need to own my own character, which is why I own Elephant Man,
Yeah.
After Mercy, and People.
Do you have a favorite that you created of your creations? Like, which one like you?
Never asked God. His favorite
It's like
creation.
who's your favorite child, right?
Yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed Beef because that surprised me. I didn't know I had that kind of story in me.
Where did this come from?
I just sort of finished. I was finishing Elephant Man for the first time, and I loved working with Shaky Kane. He was kind of crazy artwork, sort of it's a little bit Jack Kirby, but it's kind of weird. And he'd done 3 issues of Elephant Man with me, and each time I wrote them, when I read them back, I couldn't believe I'd written them.
Yeah.
Because you sort of, it's got this kind of David Lynch overhead quality to his artwork. It's hard to put into words what it is. It's unsettling. And, you know, I had done a lot of research about the treatment of animals. And then I was trying to work with a friend at Image Comics called David Shane, and he said, I said, we should do a book together. No, he asked me what my favorite Marvel character was. I said, I'm sort of certain. And I said, who are yours? He said, Goon, the Beast, the Hulk, Thing,
Big monstrous guy.
and I said, they're all knuckleheads. And I said, that's all you got. And then we found out there was a book called Knuckleheads. And then I thought, they're all the same characters. You can't write a book with 5 similar characters.
Yeah.
So I thought, what's a good name for a knucklehead? And I thought, Beef.
Yeah.
And everything flowed from that. So that was collaborative. But I ended up doing most of the writing on that book. But it was, I just moved here. Jason and Megan loved it. We were signing. It was a nice sort of surprising, not Elephant Man,
Right.
you know, because I always intended to do Elephant Man for at least 10 years, because I think there's strength in doing a body of work, and, you know, even though people may not have read the Elephant Man, they think we're just Starkings read it. But even if you've never read it, you know it's around. The only reason you know it's around is because I've done it for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, so there is strength in that. There's strength in the fact that because it came out regularly and I got a movie option, you know, I can, you know, we're doing a set of pins for Broad Bubble, prints, you know, Eric Powell has done a screen print that we're going to print next year. So it's nice to have skills that I can wrap around my own product and not worry about, you know, getting the rights.
Yeah. Corporate interference.
Yeah. If I decide tomorrow I want to do Elephant Man Bubble, I can do Elephant Man Bubble Bath.
Exclusive at FarleyCon, Elephant Man Bubble Bath is the next
You need
series.
these glasses.
Well, we're almost out of time. Are there any questions?
Who were Jason and Megan you just mentioned?
Jason and Megan, I have no idea. You know who they are. The Prizes of Infinity Flux, the best comic book store in Chattanooga.
An example of your graphic design
Oh yeah,
skills.
yeah. I redesigned the Infinity Flux logo.
The store is wrapped in Richard Starkings' goodness. Very-
And Alex are walking out there.
Yeah, Alex and Andy's on the front window. So yeah, just like
Yeah, and he is splattered on the front window.
on the front end, soon to be. Yeah, your artwork's going to be on the front windows, or new artwork's going to be on the front soon. Your logo, which you nitpicked apart.
Well, you know, I've never seen my logo the size.
That big, the size
What
of
is
a
it?
building.
20 feet tall by 48 feet
It's
across.
huge, yeah.
So when you blow up a Illustrator file, there's a little blue line. You've seen it? There's a little blue line right where you park.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my fault. It's just slightly, the drop shadow is slightly off. But you know, you can't tell when you drive past.
I couldn't tell standing right next to him. We were doing. I was like, you started pointing out all these
You don't
things.
have a trained eye.
I don't. That's why you should. Yeah, don't tell people. Like, don't point out the imperfections because you know I didn't notice it. You're like, there's a little hump on the L. I was like, where? I don't. You know.
Matt sees the world through rose-colored glasses.
That's right.
Right.
Through rose-colored heart-shaped glass.
Yep. Any other questions though?
What's it like mentoring the up-and-coming artists?
Mentoring.
Yeah. Andy.
Oh. Who wants to mentor Andy Dugan? He doesn't need it. I have to say, you know, because Andy will remember meeting Tim for dinner, and I haven't told you this. So after dinner, because you guys were fighting over, you know, you were very resistant to Tim's encouragement. Let's put it that way. And we left, and Tim said, "Andy's not going to make it." And I said, "Right." But you listened in your work, not face to face. You were chewing your thumb a lot. And when Andy chews his thumb, he disagrees with you.
I'm still looking out for that.
But Andy, you know, the thing is,
No, I don't.
you can only connect people. You can't do the work for them. Andy has done the work himself. So.
Yeah.
And we all done.
Actually, I do remember the first time I met you was at a signing at Flux. You were signing one of my books, and you mentioned how, or maybe you told me, I don't remember which, but when you sign, and you're signing it to somebody, you say for
Yeah.
so-and-so, not to so-and-so.
Yeah.
I remember that. I like that. I mean, that's, you know, a small thing, but that's a nice little nugget of information that somebody might not think about. Is
Well,
how you
signing
address
comics,
things.
make sure your signature is legible. And I don't know if you've seen any of Sam De La Rosa's signatures. Beautiful, legible signature. Because I see so many writers especially, and my signature used to be legible. But Jose de Drone sitting next to me and said, "Richard, he's Mexican. Richard, the people need to read your autograph. You must make it legible." So I changed my autograph so that you can read it. And if you see like Joe Casey or Joe Kelly, it's just like squiggles.
Yeah.
Like that. And some people do a quick signature because there's so many.
Right.
But when nobody goes to a bar for a drink, people go to the benches not for your autograph, not to buy a comic, but to have interaction with people. And the longer you make that interaction, the more interested they will be in reading your work.
Yeah.
And if your signature is legible, they'll remember that interaction too, because they tell you it was. And you know, you learn a lot going to shows. And it's unfortunate an artist has to sit in a drawing. But a writer, you know, I draw because again it extends the interaction. And I've learned to draw my characters in a sort of quick way. But again, they don't come by a comic book often. They want that relationship with you, and in some cases like Venom, they already have that relationship with you. Now, you worked on a comic that meant something to them when they were 12 or 15 or whatever it was. But if you're working on your own book, like Black Thing that Andy does, or Elephant Man for me, you want them to have a good reason to read your book, and there's nothing beats being nice to someone in order to encourage them to.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And some people have a problem with being nice, that's their problem. But, you know, we've all of us been on the other side of the table, and there's nothing worse than just nobody even making eye contact with you, or not really talking to you. And, you know, it really is about everybody else. Everybody wears what they're interested in on their t-shirt. Venom. Infinity Flux, I don't even know what that is, Ashley. Batman, Joker, Tyler's a big fan of Adidas.
Right, yeah.
So, you know, there's your conversation right there.
Yeah.
You know, and usually if they're coming to see you, they are interested in something about the way you present themselves. So, have a conversation.
Yeah.
Talk something.
Awesome. Well, final thoughts. It is officially a speech bubble and a, did I get that wrong?
Word balloon.
Word balloon.
And a thought bubble.
Thought bubble, okay. Because I know there's a lot of different names, but I remember you got on to me the other day for calling them wrong.
Yeah.
So I needed you to lay down
Here's
this.
how you remember it. They look like balloons
Yeah.
and they look bubbly.
Okay.
Right? That's all it is. It looks like a balloon,
Yeah.
or is it bubbly? Then you will remember. Is it bubbly or is it bubbly?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Which one would, of course, nowadays there's no thought bubbles.
In the comics you read,
Sure.
but there are lots of comics with thought bubbles.
Right. Oh, I think the old school stuff. They're still there.
They're in new comic books. You just don't.
Oh, I don't read the ones that.
You know, Marvel, DC.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's gonna do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question. Why did they get rid of the thought bubbles?
Why did they get rid of thought bubbles?
Marvel
Miller.
and DC, the big two.
Frank Miller. Frank Miller started doing captions for internal narrative, and it just became sexy and more adult.
Yeah.
So it's not like there was a memo, stop doing thought bubbles, but suddenly everybody did internal narratives. And I think Frank made it, he wrote it in such a way where you knew, for instance, in Daredevil 181, that you were inside Bullseye's head, the whole story. So he did it in a very dramatic and powerful way. Whereas if you've done thought bubbles and Bullseye thinking, then it seemed a little more juvenile. And I think as comic book readers grew up with the material, they didn't want to be associated with the more juvenile aspects of it. And I think, you know, whether we like it or not, Marvel and DC comics are bought mostly by 35 to 60-year-old men. You know, the younger editions of the comic prove that younger audience is not catered for by the comics that people of age can read. So we're also to blame in that, you know, we see a thought bubble and we think, oh, that's for kids. But that doesn't stop you rereading old comics that have thought bubbles and feeling good about it, right?
Right.
And I think kids comics, as they are now, have thought bubbles. You know, I'm sure Dogman has thought bubbles. I'm sure some of the younger girls have thought bubbles. So it was really more a shift of style than a memo saying no more thought bubbles.
Every time I see one in a new book, I think, oh, I love those. I wish
Alan
there
Moore
was
did
still
a
around.
great shirt story that was all thought bubbles, nothing but. So, you know, Alan Moore was also a big fan of narrative captions, but, you know, comics has great tools that are specific to comics. Title pages, credit boxes, cover lettering. In fact, we're doing cover lettering for Star Wars Adventures now, in the style of sort of 60s and 70s comics, by request of Dark Horse. You know, and Tyler's been doing these splashy, old style cover lettering which lure you in.
Yeah, we talked about some of those on our videos, and yeah, I love the older style with the, you know, the
Burst.
Is that what
It's a burst.
It's a burst. Okay, yeah, but, you know, the things. Burst, yeah. Yeah, I love that style. Right.
We'll teach you the terminology.
I'll get it.
That's the next panel.
That's the next one, right. There's going to be like a PowerPoint presentation with all the different shapes and what they're called.
There is a book that's the lexicon of comics that is all the different words. I've got a copy of it.
Okay, nice. Well,
All right.
that's going to do it. I think we're out of time. Thank you very much, Richard, for
You're welcome.
illuminating us with your warm.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out, my friends, and